1. This was about 2 years ago, so I was around 16 or 17. It should be noted that I am a 5-foot-tall girl and my twin sister is just 2 inches taller than me, so we are relatively small. It was a weekend night, and my sister and I were left alone since my mom, stepdad, and little brother left to go to a party. My sister was in her room and I was in the living room, watching TV, so I'm right next to the front door. I hear a knock about a minute after my family had just left, and I go to open it since I assumed my family may have forgotten something important and returned to get whatever item. Now, because I am small, I cannot peek through the peephole even on tippy toes. If I look through the blinds, whoever is outside will be able to tell because we have these wooden blinds where all of them shift to whichever direction if you move one. But I didn't think about doing either of those things since I did think it was a family member. So when I opened the door, there was a woman there. I did not know her. She seemed in her early 20s, had dark hair, and was a bit taller than me and my sister. But that was all I could make out since we didn't have a light at our front door and just the moonlight that was barely there. She proceeded to ask me if there was a certain someone that lived there, so I told her no because I knew no one of that name. The whole thing was creepy. She wore dark clothing, spoke in a low voice, and kept looking at the screen door handle as if she was waiting for me to open it. I was thankful that separated us, and she said her goodbyes and left, and I closed and locked the doors. I decided to go on the other side of the house where the lights were off, and she wouldn't be able to see if I opened the blinds of that window. And I see her in the driveway just looking at my house while on the phone with someone. Stayed there for a good 3 minutes after the call ended and left. Okay, I was creeped out and told my sister who watched TV with me in the living room after that. About 15 minutes go by, we hear a knock on the window. We got scared until we heard my aunt's voice, so we opened the door. She came to return something, I believe, and noticed how spooked we were, so we told her what happened, and she told us to get in her car and we'll get Starbucks to make us feel better. Sure enough, it did. And she dropped us off at our house and didn't leave even after 5 minutes we got into the house and locked the doors. She soon left. Another knock was heard about 3 minutes later. I assumed my aunt realized she forgot to give back whatever item she originally was going to drop off, and I opened the door without even checking who it was. Standing in front of me was this huge guy. He was at least 6'4", maybe 250. Just overall, I knew he would be 100% able to take me and my sister down without a fight. He asked for the same man the woman earlier asked for, and I told him I don't know who that is and he didn't live here. He also looked at the screen door handle as if he were waiting for me to open it as well, and just left. My sister and I were terrified because there was no way that was a coincidence. I look out through the blinds again, and in the middle of the driveway between our cars, I saw the man talking to the same woman who was here earlier. They talked for 5 minutes and went walking to their car, which was parked all the way on the side of the road and 2 houses down. It was creepy because we had plenty of parking space in front of or near our house. My sister and I triple-checked every door and window was locked, put our dogs inside, and waited for our family to come home soon. My family soon came from the party and we told them what happened more in depth. We called them after the guy came by, but party was about an hour away without all the traffic. They were creeped out as well. My sister and my stepdad are certain whoever used to live in our house was a drug dealer or something illegal, and he has some people very angry at him to come to our house thinking he still lives there. But could also believe that maybe we're part of whatever the guy did, and won't hesitate to come after us. It's been this way ever since we moved in 4 years ago. To those random, sketchy people who come to my house, let's not ever meet again. And yes, I know I'm a dumbass. I wasn't thinking and kept being under the impression it was a family member knocking at my door. I will check up on the history of my house and give an update if someone sketchy did live there, or just see if I can find anything about that couple. 2. When I was 13, I moved from my hometown in Tennessee to a whole new place in northern Michigan. There I met my best friend Lena. For this story, I'll refer to her as my twin sister because that's what we call ourselves in our everyday lives. Lena has two younger sisters, Katie, who's not as prevalent in this story but I mention for future references, and Marina, who plays a huge part later on. Lena and I had a friend called Bear. We also had a friend who I would later date named Ronnie. Ronnie and Bear knew a girl named Mandy, who is the antagonist of this story. We met Mandy in high school, our freshman year. She's 17, we're 14. No big deal. Most of us hang out with older kids anyway. Cool. She was a little annoying, but we dealt with it because Bear had a crush on Mandy's older brother. So the stalking wasn't really stalking at first. Mainly she was annoying, tried to tag along with us for everything, and was mostly just generally a nuisance. She had a class with Lena, and most often would hang around her before and after. Eventually, Mandy began to crave Lena's attention. She would tug on Lena's hair in class when she was talking to our other friends, be very loud and aggressive when she told her to hold on, shoved herself into Lena's personal space, etc., etc. She would take pictures of Bear, Ronnie, Lena, me, and anyone else she knew and post them all over the internet. Ronnie had explicitly stated that he didn't want pictures of himself on the internet, and she posted them anyway. She went as far as to use those pictures she had taken of them without their knowledge and posted without their consent as her Facebook profile picture. She went to Bear's apartment one day and ended up giving her a ring. Her parents got angry, for I can only guess why, and Mandy decided to lie and tell them that Bear had stolen the ring from her. She then told them that Bear had lost it. This got Bear into deep shit with Mandy's parents, despite it not being true. They later learned this wasn't the case, as they found out Mandy was stealing money from them constantly. This isn't as relevant, but it is fucked up. Mandy started getting worse and worse. I confronted her about her physical abuse towards Lena, and told her to either leave Lena alone completely or stop being so irritating. I also told her I would personally kick her teeth in if I heard she physically harmed Lena again. After that, she stopped for a while. She began showing up to places we were going and forcing herself into the group. One very important example of this was a birthday party Lena had. She was turning 15, and it was a cosplay party. She showed up, unannounced and uninvited, to Lena's home in a Halloween costume, feigning ignorance when we told her she had not been invited and she wasn't allowed to be at Lena's home. She showed up to Ronnie's house while he was home alone, prompting me to get rather angry. She had a crush on him, she claimed, and she knew I was dating him at the time. Ronnie told her to leave and said that he didn't want anything romantic or sexual from her because he had a girlfriend. She didn't leave until Ronnie's mom came home and threatened to call the police. A fun tidbit about all this is that Ronnie had no neighbors for miles. He lived on farmland miles outside of the nearest city. Hell, he lived miles from me, and I was at least 10 minutes from the city. She had to have intentionally shown up, and she was obviously not popping in while in the area. Things seemed to calm down once I moved again. I had long since broken things off with Ronnie, and we remained friends for a good while. I heard less and less about Mandy until I wondered if anything had ever happened. It was finally seemingly over. About a year ago, I was asked by Lena if I remembered Mandy. I told her yes, of course. I asked why she asked me. She then dropped an atom bomb on me. Lena was a Christian for a while when I knew her. She'd been raised Baptist. She and her siblings attended a youth group at the church we had went to. I went with them because it made me happy, despite the fact that I'm Jewish. We were all pretty close with the youth pastor and youth leaders, so I was surprised to hear that they stopped going weeks prior. I asked why. Mandy had been waiting every week at the youth group to see Marina, waiting to ask her out. Mandy, who was now 12 years old, was waiting on a weekly basis to see Marina, who was 12, to ask her out on a date. A 20-year-old woman was trying desperately to ask out a 12-year-old girl who wasn't really old enough to know if she even liked anyone, let alone if she was bisexual or gay. I was beyond furious. I was seeing red quite literally. I texted Mandy as I had her in my contacts and asked her. She became immediately defensive, asking me over and over who told her and why I wanted to know. Now, for the past few years, I've been studying abnormal psychology, forensics, criminology, etc., to prepare for college and university when I go. This defensive behavior, especially in Mandy, showed me that she was guilty. I didn't answer past, someone told me, and I need to know. Shockingly, she told me the truth. She said yes, it was true, but she was done with it now. She had a boyfriend. This news made me feel physically ill. I didn't ask how old he was, and she told me he was 16. I didn't feel any better. The worst part about everything she had done, in my eyes, is try to ask out a 12-year-old girl when she was 20. That's the absolute most sickening thing about all of it, and I feel ill typing this. So, Mandy, for your own sake, let's not meet. God only knows what I'd say or do to you if I ever saw you again after that. 3. This occurred in winter of 2013 when I was 21 and in the military. I am a petite female for context, and I have an appearance of looking younger than I actually am. A little backstory. At this point in time, I had been in the military for a little over 2 years. My first duty station being in Detroit. I had lived off base and at first lived in a township of North Detroit where my apartment was broken into. I woke up to my door handle being completely disassembled, and my car was broken into. Although that was partly my fault since my car at the time had manual locks, and I might have had a back door unlocked the night it was broken into. After those events, I decided to move since my lease was up, and I chose a gated community even further north-northwest, into a different township. I lived on my own the entire time I was stationed in Detroit, which always kept me on edge because SVU and CSI messed with my trust of strangers. Anyway, the new place was super nice and affordable, and even though it wasn't completely secure as far as a literal gate surrounding the apartments, residents had to have a pass to even drive through the community, and visitors had to check in with security before being allowed on the premises. I felt way safer at this new place than my prior residence. The apartments were set up to have 4 units per housing building, and the front doors leading into each of the apartments were on the outside. Due to this, each door had a light next to it, so when you checked your peephole, you could see who's there. That's important later. Our duty rotation was similar to a firefighter's duty rotation, where we would stand duty for 2 days and have sliding weekends. Duty every other weekend. Meaning it's a pretty predictable schedule. This will come into play later. I am super introverted and I keep to myself most of the time, but I am friendly when I meet new people, etc. But never one to make best friends with the neighbors. So when I first moved in, summer of 2012, I had a neighbor next to me on the 2nd level, and one below me on the 1st level. But over the next 2 months, they moved out, and I was alone in my housing building. Which I would be lying if I said that didn't give me anxiety a bit. Fast forward to December 2012, and our duty rotation had a complete overhaul, making it a little less predictable. We would stand duty for a day and overnight, and the next day work until 1400, and go home for the next 2 days. Over the holidays, my then boyfriend visited me from out of state. We were doing a distance relationship, so we barely saw each other. A week later, I was taking my garbage to the dumpster and collecting my mail. Once I locked my mailbox by the dumpster and turned around, there was a guy standing about 30 feet behind me just staring at me. I was startled because it's broad daylight and I did not see him when I was walking to the dumpster and mailbox area. He's dressed in black pants and a black hoodie and larger than me, so I would have seen him or heard him. I just stand there, not making a move, and he says, "Hi, how are you?" So I introduce myself, and he asks if I'm in the military because he's seen me in some type of uniform. So I say yes, I'm in the Hellfire branch. He then makes me super weirded out by mentioning my schedule. "I've noticed your work schedule is different. You used to come home every 2 days, now it's like every other day. Is that going to be the new normal for you?" So my Spidey Chris Hansen sense kicks in, and I say, "Oh no, that's just the new holiday routine schedule. We will be having a completely different one in the coming weeks." Bold-faced lie. That was the new normal, but he didn't need to know. And I receive a trailing, "Oh," from him. Then he asks if the guy who was around me over the last week was a family member. To which I reply that he is my boyfriend and former military. That's how we met. Taking care not to mention he lived in a completely different state. He doesn't say anything, and I want to scram before anything crazy happens, so I say it's nice to meet him. And he says, If you want to come to my apartment sometime, feel free to. I live in the first floor unit right over there. My buddy who's in another branch than you is over, and we're going to watch Star Wars. The unit he lived in was a unit directly across from mine, but with a parking lot in between them. So I turned it down even though I love Star Wars, and say my farewell. I felt weird about it, but went about my day, and over time it left my mind. Another fast forward to the end of January 2013. I was leaving work for the day after my duty day, and my friend Easy Breezy asks if I want to join him and another mutual friend at a bar later for beer and karaoke. Of course I'm down. Easy Breezy is my best friend, and it's depressing in the Dirty D during the winter months, so it would lift my mood. Easy Breezy was working in the galley at this time, and didn't have to stand duty, but he planned to meet me at my apartment after he got off work, 5 p.m., meaning he would be at my place around 6 to 6:30. My duty section got off at 2 p.m., so I went home and chilled out on my couch for a bit. Because I stood mid-watch the night before, I was insanely tired and fell asleep on the couch probably around 3 p.m. Obviously, since it's wintertime in Detroit, the days are super short, so it gets dark around 4:30 to 5 p.m. While napping, I wake up to knocking on my door. At first I thought that it was a dream, so I kept snoozing. Then the knocking turned into banging, and half awake, half asleep. T-Helper Cell looks at her phone and sees that it's 5 p.m. No way is it my friend, and besides, even if it was, he usually calls my phone if I don't answer my door right away. In my utter exhaustion, I blow it off and fall back to the snooze. I then wake up to my phone going off, and it's Easy Breezy. I pick up, and he says he's there and to answer the door. I go to my peephole, paranoid T-Helper Cell at her finest, and see that the area is completely black. So I call Easy Breezy back and ask if he can start talking at my door because I can't see that it's him. He does, I open it, and he asks what happened to the light and why it was off. I had no idea why my external door light was not on, and we go to fix it. Lo and behold, the bulb was twisted to make it turn off. We twist it back to the on position, and I explain what happened earlier, finding the events of the day pretty shady. Right away, I didn't think that it may have been, forgot his name, but it would make sense if it was. He gave me weird vibes, and after that I didn't feel comfortable in my apartment and couldn't wait to leave. So, creepy neighbor trying to lure me with my favorite movie and watching nearly every move, let's not meet. Side note, I watched that episode of Criminal Minds, where the serial killers twist the light bulbs to the off position of their victims' outer lights 2 weeks after this happened to me. Gave me chills, and when I received orders 2 months later, I took them without looking back. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 3 True Scary Stories. Episode 404, and thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. And, yes, Scotland continues its trend of 4 seasons in one day. It was sunny earlier. Now it appears to be raining. Okay. You know it's June, right? Might be getting good weather now. I demand sun tomorrow. By demand, I mean I politely ask. I would appreciate some. Okay, update for those who have been wondering. The icky treatments I've been getting from the dermatology people are helping slightly. There seems to be some improvement. They're just messy as hell. And I hope it's not too much longer before it actually clears things up. Seems to be heading in that direction. I can at least say there is an improvement. Just very messy. Looks like you've got the 2 gunks. You've got the coal tar, then you've got yellow soft paraffin. And it's just gunk after gunk after gunk. It's not fun. Let's leave it at that. Not fun at all. But hey, if it gives me a few months of peace from this naughty skin of mine, then so be it. Okay, enough grumbling. Well, more grumbling actually, but I just saw a thing earlier. When I was taking a break there. Apparently London is going to get the first 360-degree infinity pool. Basically, it's a big old pool on top of a building where there's no visible way to access it. Apparently the entrance is hidden and it rises up and it's very silly looking. Also looks highly dangerous. But that's apparently something they think the world needs. I mean, it's the United Kingdom. It's not going to get a lot of use if they ever do build it. I mean, we don't really get enough sunny weather. Plus, as I mentioned, it looks terrifying. And really, if you're in a pool, are you really there for the view? And I say London's getting it, I don't really imagine the average Londoner is going to give a crap about it. But what does grumpy old Hellfreezer know, eh? Okay, and with that I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.